Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will discuss about loops with C#.NET. We'll start our discussion with an example. Let's consider a scenario you would like to print all the cricketers' name on your console window who has played the cricket ever so far internationally. What you would do? Are you going to write the console.write line for each of these cricketer names on your console window like I have displayed here on my screen? If that's the case, then it would take a lot of time and effort to write each and every line. Seems like a repetitive action, isn't it? To perform such repetitive actions on your program, you need some kind of a effortless way of writing the code, and that is where loops helps you to do the job. With .NET you have two different types of loop available. One is the counter type of loop which runs on a counter condition. So you give it a start number, your counting should start from, let's say, 0, and it should end up until the count reaches to 10. Starting from 0 to 10, it should basically perform that repetitive action. So the syntax is for, which is a keyword available within the .NET C#. As soon as I type in the for, you can see that I'm getting an IntelliSense. If I press tab twice, then I'll get a pseudocode for each loop, and this is the pseudocode. Like I mentioned, this is a counter loop, so it requires a starting condition which is given here. The starting condition is starting from the integer, starting value I as in 0, I with 0. Then it requires a exit condition when this loop should exit. So we are saying that when the length or the number of counter, let's say 10 is the length, 10 is the exit condition we have given. So starting from I is equal to 0, and when the I less than 10, then this until then this particular loop should run. And next you have this increment operator given here. So this is where a for loop keep on running one by one, or the number of time you want to increment the loop is defined with this third argument within the loop, and by default it is given as an I++, which is a post increment operator, which we have seen in our previous video, which means that whenever your loop runs, it after running a particular loop condition, the I will be post incremented by 1 using this operator. Let's look at one of the example here. So I'll simply print I as an variable, which we have it, and let's see how does it prints. Let me just comment it out for now and print our value of I in the console window. So here is what it has printed starting from 0 to 9. We have not considered 10 to print because when the I is less than 10, then which means that it will go up till 9 and then it will print. If we put a breakpoint just to know how the execution is happening. So I starting from I is equals to 0, it will go and check whether I is meeting the condition which is less than 10. Yes, it is meeting, so it will go inside the curly braces, which is the execution boundary of the for loop. Now it will print or perform the action which are been written inside this particular for loop, which is just printing the value of the I, and then it goes to the end of the for loop boundary, and as soon as I press F10, it goes to the increment operator, which means that the value of the I will be incremented by 1. Let's print that. It has incremented by 1, which means that the value of I becomes 1 now. Now as the for loop has started executing, this starting condition only runs once, right? After that it is the just the execution between these two conditions. This will increment, this will check, this will increment, this will check. So this is just going to shift from left to right like this. Now it is again checking I, the value of I is less than 10. Yes it is. Then it will go again, I will be incremented to post incremented to 2. Now the value of the I becomes 2. Again it will go unless you found the value of I becomes 10, which will be the exit condition for this for loop, right? Now here we are using the post increment value. Now consider a scenario. As a developer you might be thinking, okay, what if I would like to increment the value of I with the value 2? Can I write it like this? Well, if you write it like this, which means that whatever is the value of I, you want to append 2 in that value. So 0 plus 2 2, 0 plus let's say 1 plus 2 3, and then 3 plus 2 5, things like that. If you would like to do that, then you may, and if you want to do that, and if you write it or set your condition like this, it will compiler will throw an exception. It says that only the assignment, call, increment or decrement await operators are allowed here in this section of the for loop, which means that you cannot have a plus 2 like this. But there is a way you can increment your counter by any number with the increment operator. So increment operators, we have seen this is one of the increment operator, but you can also have an increment operator like this, right? So this is one of the increment operator, we can have it. So let's run that. So this time it's going to perform the repetition, and it has print 0 2 4 8 6, right? All my even numbers are being printed. Similarly, I could have the multiplication of 2, let's say. With that, is it going to work? Should be, because it is again a type of increment operator. As you can see that it's running, keep on running here, right? This goes into the infinite loop. If I just put a breakpoint here, says that it's going to always going to be 0, because the value of I is starting from 0, and 0 multiplied by any number, which is in this case 2, is always going to be 0. So this loop is keep on running. So you have to be very careful while writing such conditions, right? Whereas if I start writing it from here and put a condition like this, I is starting from 1 and the exit condition is less than or equals to 10, then if I use the multiplication operator, I should be okay with that. It's waiting for a breakpoint. I'll say continue, and you can see that as soon as I continue that, starting from I is equal to 1, then 1 multiplied by 2 is equals to 2, and then 2 multiplies by 2 4, 4 multiplies by 2 8, things like that, right? I could also do it like this, multiplying by the same number. Let's see if that is going to work fine. Again, it is going on an infinite loop, because here 1 multiplied by 1, 1 multiplied by 1, it will keep on going like this, right? And that's the reason it is important to run your loop in this case starting from 2 rather than starting from 1, because it will always going to be like this. And if I say put the condition up to 100, let's see, basically we are trying to get the value of square of each numbers in this case, right? So it's printing the value up till 16, because 16, the square of the 16 is going to be beyond 100, so it will exit the condition, and that's why it is printed only up till this value. So you get an idea that this is a counter loop running on a counter value, counter condition, and then we have also take a look at that how you can increment or increase or decrease the value of the counter. It is also possible to run the reverse counter as well. For example, value starting from 100 or maybe 10, let's say, and then you want to go until the value of I becomes greater than 0, and then what I can do is I can have a minus minus I. So this is running a reverse loop. Is it possible to run the I or my loop on this? A string is, by definition, it is a collection of characters, right? Each character is stored in a memory location with its ASCII value in the database. So even though you are treating this string as a variable, but in the memory it is having for each of these characters, it is the program is storing the ASCII value into the memory location. So basically any string is a collection of the character, which means that as it is a collection, so you can run or you can get the value of a specific character from the collection of character using its index. And that's the concept of array, which we'll look into some other program, but that's how it is right now, right? So that will give you a specific index character depending upon the value of the index which we are providing with the help of I. So in the first index I becomes 0, next index I become 1, and so on. Let's print that and show you how this example look like. As you can see that for each index I'm printing it here and I'm retrieving the value like this. Now let's look at our second loop which we have, which is a for each loop. The syntax of the for each loop is for each, and then you will get an IntelliSense. Again you press the double tap using the IntelliSense, and that will give you a code snippet. The difference with this for each loop is the for each loop again runs on a collection. Obviously you can run the for each loop on string collection as well or any array as well, not an issue, it will work as is, right? The good thing about this for each loop, as soon as I provided the collection value, the for each loop determines the type of the collection it is. For example, in this case, as soon as the value of the collection, which is a string, provided to a for each loop, the for each automatically detects it is a collection of character, and you can see that it has automatically given a hint that each item will be of type char. I have not specified that. As soon as you change the value of the character, it has detected that. Give you one more example. I'm going to define an array. Item list is an array, and what I'll do is I'll just randomly give any number. Okay, so that's my array type. You can see that. Now as soon as I change the value of let me just create another for each loop, and this time if I just give the collection as an item list, as you can see that here in this case it has automatically changed from character to integer type. So for each loop, that's one of the difference between the for and for each loop. For each loop automatically determines the element type based on the collection on which it requires to run the for each loop. So you have to, and obviously you have to, if you are willing to run the for each loop on your collection, on your program, then you have to provide the collection to start with it, and each item of the collection your for each loop will run, right? As we have provided a array type of collection here, it is taking each item which is of integer, because it knows that this array is of type integer, so it is automatically determining the each of these items, right? And here in the other example, it knows that the item is going to be character, so it automatically determines that as well. Now the other difference what we have with the for each loop, you do not have to provide the starting condition, the length and the increment value. By default, as soon as you provide the collection value, your for loop iterates each item of that collection, and you do not have a choice basically to make whether you would like to iterate or increment by 2, like we did in the previous example, or increment by 3, and so and so on. It runs by default on each of the item. Now whether you want to skip particular item on a specific condition, of course you can put a if condition inside the loop. For example, if item dot you can put a condition if the item value of the item is, let's say, B for an example, then do not print it, or not equal to B, like this. So this will only print if the character value is only A, right, for an example. But obviously your loop will run those many times. You cannot have a choice of incrementing a loop the way we did with the for loop, right? For loop is obviously running with the help of these value type, which it requires a value type to start the condition, then it requires a value type to on these value types only it is basically checking the condition values and incrementing as well. So obviously this is comparatively faster than the for each loop, right? But the best case of using the for each loop is if you would like to retrieve a value from a collection and then you don't want to determine or typecast a value of the collection like this index kind of thing, then you can use the for each loop smoothly. Okay, so these are the two type of loop which we can use with C# program the way we want, and we can perform the repetitive actions. Coming back to our example, let's say if we have number of players available in an array or from a file or CSV, we can read all those items as in collection. We can apply or display the name of each of these collection items with the help of either for loop or for each loop, right? I hope you have found this useful and you would be able to use these loops criteria the way you would like to use it in your program. Thanks for watching it. See you in the next video where we'll look at the while and do while loop.